Okay, so um, it is a few minutes past the top of the hour, but I want to say good morning to everyone. We are live now on YouTube, and today is a very special day for us at CCGI. We have started this short governance live series, which we have done in the past for previous Governance Week. And it's all part of building towards the excitement of Governance Week, which is, our signature event here at the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute. So today is our first live for this short series, and we are extremely pleased to have a very special lady with us. She's someone who would be appearing on Governance Week for the very first time as well. And that is because I found her on LinkedIn only earlier this year. So, Cecile Watson, CEO of Shredwiz, located in Jamaica, it is an absolute pleasure to have you and to include you as part of our CCGI family now. So, I want to say hello and welcome to you to this live series, and also to ask you to share a little bit with us about yourself, just very briefly, and about Board Accelerator, the
Oh,
work that you do.
okay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really delighted to join you for Governance Week. And although I feel a little bit like the guinea pig this morning, being the first in this series, that's not uncommon for me, being in a space that is unfamiliar. So, pleasure to be here. Who is Cecile Watson? Currently, and we're talking on the professional side of me, right? Because as you
Yes.
know, we're just what we see is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of stuff that goes on beyond that. Different communities may get a flavor of. But in this space, I work with boards and I help boards and C-suite leaders really to effect good governance practices. My journey really in this space started as the CEO of Shredwiz, where we do document destruction, and it was part of the program to help with information governance in preparation for the Data Protection Act in Jamaica. So I have a mobile shred truck. I call her Chili because she's hot. And we shred documents to protect information. But as I operate in that space and I operate on boards, being on boards, both in the public sector and the private sector, I have been a resource to my colleagues in the space of governance. And this started many years ago, from I would say as far back as 2000, having come through training in the C-suite, working on boards, etc. In 2000, I had the opportunity to be trained by the Commonwealth Association of Governance. And at that time, I was with CIBC as retail director in Jamaica, and I had the opportunity to lead that charge in terms of putting charters in place, etc. At that point, I was on the board, but as you can appreciate, in 2000, you didn't have the kind of structure around governance that we see today. So it was part of the initial part of that journey in Jamaica, where the government of Jamaica had brought in the Commonwealth Association of Governance to support leaders in both the public and private sector to do governance. And I've taken that with me along my journey. And it has led to me, my colleagues calling on me for support and also refer me to other boards that they have been on to do with training and board performance evaluations and the likes. And that really has caused me to grow this platform, which I call Board Vox, where we seek to be the tone and voice, tone, and expression of good governance. Not just governance, because governance is one thing, but how do you effect good governance? And that's really how I steer my offer to the market. So that's a long response, but I think you get a sense of what I do by background training. I started my career as an engineer, trained at UE in Trinidad, electrical engineer. But I moved very quickly thereafter into a management role, did my MBA, worked in banking for most of my formal corporate career before I stepped out into the space of leading the public sector entity here. I was the head of NHT here for a couple of years. And then I moved into this terrain where I see myself as an entrepreneur and effective changing lives and livelihoods through my offer of good governance.
Yes. Well, Cecile, I absolutely love that very diverse background that you have described that you have first. And truly, I find it reflects that very unique perspective you bring. Because when I came across your article on LinkedIn on the board strategy, I was absolutely in awe. I thought, what a wonderful, insightful analysis of how boards actually function. And the fact that very often we talk strategy, but what do we mean when we are talking about the board strategy versus the organizational strategy? So I will tell you, you inspired me.
Thank you. Thank you. And it really started because I've seen so many directors, that conversation comes back over and over again. We need to be more strategic. We need to be more strategic. And it struck me, we do a lot of work. We spend a lot of money developing strategy for the organization, but we don't spend as much time thinking about the board as a strategic business unit, a very important strategic business unit, who is driving so much change and who's responsible for so much accomplishment of the organization, representative of the company. And yet we're not thinking in terms of what we are expecting, what's expected of us as a strategic business unit, what outcomes we're supposed to drive, etc. And it was like an aha moment for me. And I said, I'm going to write this piece. I started actually doing a little bit of research and said there must be something out there that can inform that perspective. And I didn't find a lot. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but if it does, it's behind the veil. And so I set out to say, okay, if this was to be created, what would it look like? And I'll get in a little bit more of that when we get to Governance Week. But it fit right into the program that I had been creating, which I call the Board Accelerator, which is moving directors, C-suite leaders, anyone who is in the governance space, corporate secretaries, through a journey of understanding what it means to effect change in a boardroom setting. So it goes from your education, which is really the foundational pieces of governance. What do we know? Building your knowledge base, because we get drawn into the boardroom as professionals in our own right. We come with certain skill sets, we come because of competencies that we have, but not many of us can come and say we truly understand what governance is. So the program is helping you to really concretize that in your mind in terms of knowledge, the foundation about what that informs us to be. And then moving you then in terms of that focus on your remit, which which takes you through incorporating that board strategy as one component, but also looking in terms of the oversight, etc. And then moving further beyond that is saying, now, how do you elevate your impact by dealing with the things that would inform you, allow you to now take that knowledge, take that execution process and elevate it through managing your own metrics in terms of how you impact the company that you're there to support.
Well, that sounds so fascinating, Cecile. I love that concept of the board accelerator. So you introduce persons from wherever they stand in their relationship to the board, whether it is a corporate secretary or an executive who is dealing with the board or someone who is on the board themselves. And then you take them from the basics in terms of their knowledge of what is corporate governance. And I will share that very often we realize that's the start of the confusion. Yes. Understanding what is governance versus what is management. Mm-hmm. And so what you do then is help them through that understanding and then grow them into how they can fulfill that role well. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and Kamla, I find that the way I do it currently is I do it to boards so that everyone is at the table, who work with each other. And I find that to be most impactful because it enables everyone to have a common understanding. There's opportunity for discussion, dialogue, in terms of, do we all understand this the same way? But once you have
that is so important.
Yeah, when you get into the room and you're having those decisions and those, not just the routine ones, but the ones that which might have an edge to it, everyone knows what each other know and can therefore be a little bit more direct at holding each other to account.
Yes.
Because, you know, the elephant in the room is seen, you know?
Yes, yes. And I would share that that resonates with the approach we have taken at CCGI as well. Whenever we have had requests for in-house training in particular, we always ask, can you include critical members of your senior management team?
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't help if only the board understands and have a concept of how they should function. Your management team need to be on board the same way. So there's a common language, a common understanding and expectation as to how everyone will work through this journey smoothly.
Absolutely. And that is, I found that to be very impactful, even in terms of my role previously in a C-suite, but also on boards. If the boards can't have a conversation that is separate to the C-suite conversation, there has to be a mingling and a meeting of minds, because I find that sometimes management make the mistake of believing that it's better to keep the board out of the loop. And there might be reasons behind this. They may feel that if they bring the board in too early, the board might be judging their performance, etc. But I've often seen the board as, I want you in the boat with me, because when you're in the boat with me, you understand that we all share in the outcomes here. And you can also contribute to me making the best decision for the company, because we're here in support of the company. We're here as representatives of the company. You keep the board outside of that loop because you're fearful that the board will overreach, etc. You will in fact get overreaching because the board doesn't, they don't understand what you understand. So there has to be that level of trust and role clarity to support that commingling of minds for the best outcome. So that,
and I'm so glad you mentioned that word trust. It is so integral in how well a board functions. And the truth is, I realize that very often we talk about the ideal scenario, the ideal situation where the board is working in the interest of the organization. And so one will expect that the management team should be able to trust the board in its collective responsibility to support the strategy of the organization. But we do know that that is not always the case.
Right.
Very often we have board dynamics involved where there may be directors who are self-interested, and you may not always know who they are. So there will always be a need to carefully balance and understand the nuances involved in the relationship among both board members and managers, and even among board members themselves. And to me, that helps make this entire journey so exciting, because it's not an easy thing to do.
Not, it is not. And the point I tend to make, I make this point to a lot of my board clients. I say, it's very easy to have a board of competent directors and still be incompetent as a board, right?
Absolutely true.
We all come with our egos. We're being selected because we're the creme de la creme, you know? Someone knows us and believes that we have something to offer. Yes, there are circumstances where people are brought in to influence, etc., in a particular way. But the impact of that can only be had if the other directors don't understand their role, they
Mhm.
don't understand their power, they don't understand their authority, and they're not prepared to be held to account and to hold others to account. So that to me is a journey that we have to take to when I sit in a boardroom, I am constantly thinking of the future and how the decisions that I am taking today will be reflected on or can be looked at by independent parties who
Yes.
will judge my contribution. And I see myself as part of I'm just one of the gears. And it is for me to turn that gear to help others to see things they may not see. And it's also, I'm constantly looking for my blind spots to understand what I may not be, what I may think I know and understand. But maybe if I listen a little more carefully, I might detect some nuances because not everyone is as confident to open up their thoughts. You hear a lot about imposter syndrome, etc., especially with the younger board members. And when I say younger, I don't mean younger in terms of age, but younger in terms of term of office. And I think it is incumbent on all of us as we take on these types of roles to truly understand that we're like the lever, right? That impacts lives and livelihood, the stakeholders, the employees, the clients, their children, their children's children, it is more than just turning up and reading some minutes and making some decisions. We're here to create value. And it's incumbent on us, if you're not up to the task, don't take the task, So that's how I see it.
Yes. Now, you shared with me a really lovely model that I would want to explore more with you as we go along. But
Yes.
there's a specific concept within that model that I would like to ask you to elaborate on. You call it the trifecta of oversight.
Right.
Tell us what that is.
Okay, so when you look in terms of a board's role, of course, we're there to create value and to sustain the organization's impact, right? There are some core capabilities that we must have command of. There are lots of things that we're there to do and understand, but I have seen in my mind, these can become condensed to three core capabilities, which I call the trifecta of oversight. One is the strategy. We are there to set the strategic direction. So we have to understand strategy. We don't have to be experts because it's all of us together who is driving that conversation. And we're supported by your C-suite leaders, but we have to know how to ask the questions, right? We need to understand the context of strategy and the board's role in strategy. And here I'm not talking about the board strategy in itself. I'm now talking about the organization strategy. So that's one of my trifecta of oversight. The other one is risk management. As directors in the boardroom, if we don't understand risk, we are not doing our work. And every decision that we're making comes with risk. And when we say A, we are proving, it is incumbent on us to know that the risks are mitigated. But there's also the other side of risk, because when we understand how much risk tolerance we have, it opens the door as well to capitalize on opportunities that are out there. So our understanding of risk is not just about the monitoring side, it's also about how we leverage it to produce better results. So that's my second in the trifecta. And the third one is performance management. And performance management is the financial performance, of course, which of course we have to have a level of financial literacy, because all that the organization does is translated into those numeric representation that is the financial statement. And we are telling the world, we are telling our shareholders, our stakeholders, the investors, that this is what we are doing, and this is what we have done, and this is what you can expect of us from us going forward. So we have to understand the numbers, the integrity behind the numbers, and how we got there. What is the process that confirms that when you ask your chairman to sign off on those financial statements, and that the board is going to approve them because they've gone through the audit committee, has taken a deeper dive with the external auditors, etc., and they say yes, and you're even ratifying those. You have to know the process, and you have to know that you have effective good diligence in going through that process to sign off and tell the world, this is who we are, right? So that whole performance management, but it doesn't stop there. That's the financial side. It's also about the performance of the team, holding them, being very clear on how you're measuring their contribution, how you're holding them to account, how you're holding yourself to account.
Right. So I just want to clarify, when you say team in this instance, do you mean the board or do you mean the management team?
I mean the management team, and I also mean the board team.
Okay.
Right? So it is because when you're thinking of performance, you're thinking if the board doesn't perform, it limits the potential of the organization. If the C-suite doesn't perform and the team below it, usually translate, we look in terms of the financials and say, did we make a profit? Have we grown? Those kind of things, and we lay that on the C-suite. But the board has a role in that as well. So you got to think about how the board is impacting that performance. Mm-hmm. How have they contributed to the process of ensuring that there's succession planning so that your C-suite is supported in having the right team in place to generate the results? We contribute to that conversation. And so those three components, I think, embodies a lot of the practice that goes into ensuring that we are doing our responsibility as boards to effect good governance.
All right, let me see if I think I might have missed one of your components. So the three components would be finance, team, and the third is?
Are you talking about the three components of
Trifecta, yeah.
Trifecta? So the first is strategy, the second is
right. Okay, so performance management has two components, which is the finance and the team. Okay, great.
Yes. And compliance. I put compliance in that as well, because obviously that's what your regulators are looking for. That's where you get fined, and that's where your stock can take a dip if you don't do the right things in terms of your compliance as well. So you get delisted.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are two things that came to mind for me as you spoke then. So one, I'll come back to it, which is the triple bottom line, which is where my head went as we started breaking down, measuring the performance. But one of the things I really love, and I want to come back to it before we deal with the triple bottom line, is when you talked about team performance. And you said the importance of not just evaluating how well the C-suite is contributing to the success of the organization, which is critical, but very often overlooked is the role of board members in contributing to the performance of the organization. And so there is this a majority view, I think, among directors that compliance is what is most important in their role when they sit around that boardroom, that they need to ensure that all their all their boxes are ticked, and therefore, so they don't become delisted and all of that. But truly, where directors can make a difference is when they can add their expertise and their competence towards helping the C-suite fulfill the objectives of the organization. And very often we miss that.
And that's why I'm positing this thing about the board strategy, because it is incumbent on the board to not just oversee management's performance, but to be introspective about how they are performing as well. And how do you know how you're performing if you don't have some kind of radar or some kind of framework to judge yourselves, right? We put performance management and systems in place for our teams, and we know exactly what we're managing them to, what we're monitoring, and we've determined that these things are critical for the company's performance. If they're not, they shouldn't be there. They're levers to that company's performance. Similarly, the board has a very specific role. And with that role comes certain accountabilities. How are we doing? If we're not having those conversations, then we too are limiting the potential of the company. And I know it's uncomfortable because it's relatively new that we've gotten to the point where we are actually having that insight to say performance management of a board is important, or performance evaluations as we call them. I've seen it implemented, and I've seen how uncomfortable or very esteemed colleagues are with how others judge their performance, right? Even though these are their peers, right? But these peers, they want to be seen in their eyes as performing, right? But we all sit around those board tables and we know who's performing and who isn't. We all have our thoughts about who's contributing, whether we say it or not, is there, right? So when you have a very crystal clear template or model that helps you to say, okay, this is what's important to our performance. Let's see how we think about it as for the board and also for ourselves. Let's give that kind of a feedback, and then let's talk about what we have assessed, the evaluation we have done of ourselves. Let's have a chat about it and say, where do we need to improve? That's a time, and that's an old template, right, that we use as we manage organizations. And it is reasonable that it is also important as a tool for boards, because we are the most critical strategic business unit when it comes to the governance of the organization.
Cecile, I am so happy that CCGI has found you, because from what you have shared there is so much we can discuss as yet. To a great extent, board evaluation is not new. It's new to us in the region, but it's not new. And a lot of the discomfort that we see directors share is so entrenched in our culture in the region, in the way in which we give and receive feedback, in the way we manage our relationships. And that requires some deep dive for us to help resolve that, because part of your model, you had also identified the role of the board in setting the tone at the top, which is so critical. So I really enjoyed that as well. And as we bring this half-hour interview to a close, I wanted to also share.
Go ahead. Just want to say, in terms of the board performance evaluations that I've done, I usually find it very interesting to see how different directors who sit in the same process are evaluate things as strongly agree versus disagree. And I say to them, it is really comes down to the fact of what you think you know. And so when you even have that kind of polarity, it gives you the opportunity now to have a conversation of why Director A may think this way, why Director B thinks otherwise. And so let's understand what is true. So when you leave that conversation and say what is true, everyone knows what, because there's evidence-based, right? I come from a background in the bank where I manage operations and I manage risk and stuff like that. So, I keep on saying when auditors come, they're looking for evidence. And in the boardroom, we also have to think evidence-based of the decisions-making process as well. So I kind of integrate all of that into the kind of training that I do as well.
Yes. And that's great, because it is an ongoing process.
Yes. It
Because
is.
even as you spoke to the importance of directors understanding the financial statements and being able to analyze, and even as you talk about the role of the directors in understanding strategic direction, and you did underscore they themselves did not need to be experts because you are supported by a team. It's everyone together. If we are working towards the same or common objective, then you can rely on your team to grow that. But along with that is the constantly evolving environment. So, as you know, this year for Governance Week, our opening keynote is Professor John Elkington. And Professor Elkington really had helped bring together a lot of the discussions around corporate social responsibility over the years, where we are going past the financial contribution of the organization into impact, the social impact, impact on people, impact on the planet, impact on community. And so when he coined the term people, planet, and profit, it brought clarity to a lot of persons' minds because prior to that, it was a huge fight trying to help organizations to understand that impact outside of profit maximization is also so critical. So we are extremely delighted that Professor Elkington will be addressing us for the opening keynote for Governance Week this year. And the opening ceremony takes place on Sunday, June 16th. It's an online event. Almost all of what we do here at the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute is done online because we try to bring the entire region together so everyone is on a level playing field to be able to contribute. And look at how well we've been able to conduct this conversation, Cecile, with you.
Yeah.
And we could have been sitting over a table having tea or coffee together,
Yes, yes,
or a bottle
yes.
of water.
Yes, technology is key.
Yes.
Lovely. Yes, yes. It is
I want
changing.
to I want to say I'm excited to have you contribute for the first time for Governance Week as well. As Cecile mentioned earlier, she will be focusing more on executing the board strategy, which I know is going to be a very eye-opening presentation for a lot of directors. So ensure that you register for Governance Week and you are part of the conversation. It's going to feature over 50 speakers from throughout the Caribbean region, and this is our 5th year. We know it will be awesome. We know that it will bring a lot of insights and it would help build the region in our understanding and our common fight in being able to improve our governance practices in the region. So, Cecile, I am delighted. As you said at the start, you felt a little bit like a guinea pig because it's our first in the series for this year, but you have done exceptionally well.
Thank you so much. And I'm really looking forward to Governance Week. And, I think what you guys are doing at Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute is really important to how we transform this region. And in particular, the topic you're bringing about the triple bottom line. I think that we're so far behind the rest of the world in terms of having that conversation. I know it, whether we believe it or not, I know it.
Yes.
So it is good that we can have it because especially with all the debate that is happening now in the United States, etc., that is seeking to, and there's a shareholder primacy versus stakeholder primacy conversation. But I think in the Caribbean region, we really have to understand that if we're going to serve the company, we have to serve all those other stakeholders as well. We have to think in terms of the environment and all that.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so the triple bottom line is going to kind of be the foundation for our discussion, but our focus is future, and it is how do we promote exceptional governance for our small states. That's where we are at, right?
Yes.
We have to think big. The region can be an amazing place to live and work and grow our families, but it requires all of us to work together and to design what that future is going to look like.
Yes.
I'm happy to have you as part of that journey with us, Cecile.
Thank you so much for inviting me along.
You're welcome. And thank you all very much. We bring this live stream to an end now. Join
And
us.
remember, sorry, Kamla, that
Sure.
my details are you can find me at boardvox.com, boardvox.com, or I use the handle at Watsocec, WATSOCEC. So that's where you'll find more about me and my work.
Very good. But I will tell you, I found Cecile on LinkedIn, so it's a great place to also locate her. All right. And of course, come and listen to her for Governance Week as well. And let's all talk about how each of us can make a contribution towards improving our corporate governance practices in the Caribbean region. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll see you tomorrow at 11 a.m. right here again on our YouTube channel. Bye now.
Bye.